Hey guys, this is John Anderson with Ragdoll Studios. Today I'm going to show you guys how to do some retopology in ZBrush and how to use PolyPaint to kind of plan out all of your topological groups and all of your edge loops and everything like that. So this is a frog character that I've been working on. I spent a little bit of time on him, not that much, but he's a Gripply from the Pathfinder RPG series. Um, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Initially, what I want to do is go ahead and fill in the gray matte cap with a skin shade. So I'm going to select skin shade, and then we're going to go ahead and select a off-white color. So we don't want pure white, just because pure white is going to be hard to see. So we'll do slightly off-white, and it's not, the fill isn't working correctly because I don't have RGB turned on. So I'm going to go ahead up and turn on RGB right there. So make sure you have RGB turned on. Don't turn on mRGB or M, because those will fill materials and you don't want to fill the materials at this point. So just check RGB and go ahead and fill your object. So document, fill object. Now what we need to do is kind of plan out where we're going to have our topological groups, so all of our edge loops and everything. So I'm going to select a blue, and I'm going to adjust my draw size such that I can paint around the mouth. And I think that this is probably a little too blue, so I'm going to go a little lighter so we can see this a little easier. And just kind of trying to keep a nice hard edge, so I'm bringing the draw size down, and I'm probably going to change my lazy mouse, turn that on so I get a cleaner edge, and just kind of go around the mouth. And edge flow should usually follow the creases in the body. So you can see around the mouth we have a crease between the mouth and the eye, and the back edge of the mouth, the jawline. So that crease is actually where the deformation is going to occur. So you have to have edge loops that can allow for that deformation. Um, Notice that I undid all this because I noticed that I had Z-Add turned on. Make sure that you have Z-Add, Z-Sub turned off, because you don't want to actually add geometry. You only want a color. You want to use PolyPaint only. So make sure RGB is turned on, and then turn off Z-Add and Z-Sub. So we're just looking at the edge loops around the mouth. So right now I'm painting where those edge loops will be. These will be the primary edge loops for the mouth movement, especially for any kind of lip curl or anything like that. Um, and so we're just going to make sure that we paint this blue on right along the crease of the mouth. Alright, so you can kind of see where that blue meets the white right at that crease on the mouth, right at where the flow changes. So, and you can see there's a crease underneath the mouth, and I'm just painting it in like so. Alright, just filling in all the extra space that I didn't hit the first time. Alright, so that looks pretty good. So I'm going to paint around the eyes. That'll be our next edge loops. We'll paint around the eyes. So we'll select a yellow. I'm selecting light colors mainly because I want to be able to see my topology easier as I go into paint my topology on. So you can see that I'm following along those creases that we had talked about. And then we want to leave a little bit of space between the blue and the yellow, because we're going to bring some other edge loops from the front of the nose back underneath the eyes. So, and again, this isn't necessary. This is really just pre-planning, trying to figure out where everything will be before we commit to a lot of time actually doing the geometry. So, but for anybody that's new to retopologizing, this is actually it's a good practice. It forces you to kind of think about things ahead of time. Alright, so what we're going to do is select a green, and we're going to paint the edge loops around where the edge loops are going to be around the nose. The nose is circular, so we're going to be changing our geometry around the nose anyway, um, to allow for um, that circular nostril. It'll also help if you want the character to breathe through its nose. You can have some deformation around the nose, and it'll deform nicely. So, and same thing for the ear. So it's a circular ear, obviously. So we're just going to paint a circular edge flow around the ear. So just cleaning it up. All right. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and paint around the nose. So we'll choose a pink, and we'll just kind of bridge between the back of the head and the front of the nose. So I'll just kind of end this right about there. Okay. We can change some of this later. This is whenever you plan like this, it's really kind of a fluid thing where you can make changes as you go, as you start to realize stuff that you initially planned was off. So I'm going to bridge the eye to the nose. Okay, paint around that green nose, and then we're going to tie things off here. And I brought that up a little bit so it can be consistent with the edge that's going to connect to the eye. Just fill in all that space there. Alright, this is looking pretty good. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in between the eyes with a purple. So it really helps to think about how you're going to break up the topology groups on your character, and this is what's going to allow you to think about that before you actually go in and start. Kind of a tedious process of retopologizing. Although in ZBrush it can go pretty quick, um, so we'll go over that in just a few minutes. Um, But yeah, you don't want to spend a lot of time retopologizing without having really planned it out ahead of time. So I've done it. It's it can work, but it definitely ends up being more time consuming until you know exactly how you want all of your topology to go. I'm also a big fan of trying to trying to do things quickly so that you're not afraid of or you're not reluctant to change your process later, or even scrap something that isn't quite working. But once you've spent a couple hours working on something, there's a reluctance to try to basically scrap the whole project and redo it. So that's why we try to do these things quick in the beginning, so that if something's not working out, it's not a huge deal to scrap it and start something new. So to start over. 3D is, at least in my experience, things don't always go as planned the first time around. So I am, you know, frequently, I wouldn't say every day, but I'm frequently having to say, all right, this isn't working. I'm going to have to stop and do something else that'll work. So I find that every single day I'm tasked with doing things that I've never done before, and I have to figure things out. So I want to work as efficiently as I can. So, um, so you'll notice that there are a lot more groups towards the front of the face. you know, in the main areas of the face, the eyes, the nose, the ear, the mouth. But on top of the head, there's really not much for deformation on top of the head. It's a solid area. You really won't get much deformation there. So that's all. We just painted that all one large purple area, expecting that we're not going to do much for deformation in that area. So I am going to continue the pink back around the neck. And you can see that there's a muscle there that I'm kind of painting around. So muscles really should get their own topology group if you expect that that muscle is going to deform. So if the creature as it moves is going to have some muscle deformity, or you're going to see that underlying muscle, you're going to want to have some topology that can hold that animation. So typically with large muscle groups that could move or flex, you're going to want to make sure that you have a separate topology group for that area. Okay, moving underneath the face, the mouth, we're going to go back to that yellow, and I think we're going to basically bring the pink down, straight down through. So, because we'll just have edge loops that'll come down and around. Okay. So again, following the topology there, or sorry, the continuity of that, the underside of the mouth, we want to have a different topology group for the throat, because we expect that the throat's going to move. So we're just going to fill in the underside of the mouth itself, so with pink. And then we'll select a yellow and we'll paint in where we want that throat to move. And I'm painting around this muscle. Again, it's another muscle group that you could expect somebody might want to move. So I'm just going to make sure that I paint around and have a separate topology group for that area. So when I say topology group, what I'm trying to do is make sure that when I move a certain area or when I rig a certain area of the character, I don't get any weird deformation in that. I want everything to be smooth and to be what I expect it would look like as it's deforming. If I don't pay attention to the topology, then as I'm moving things, it's going to it could deform weird. So what I'm going to do now is set my draw size down to 3, and I'm going to turn on lazy mouse so that I can get a nice even stroke, increase my lazy smooth and lazy radius, and then I'm just going to start drawing some edges around our topology groups. It was a little small, so I switched it up to a draw size of 4. And I'm just going to basically create edges between the topology groups. And this is going to be the basis for all of our edge flow. So we'll draw an edge loop around the eyes and around the underside of the eyes. And we're really just breaking the different different groups apart and separating them by their own individual edges. Okay. So we'll do the same thing around the mouth. You can see how Lazy Mouse really gives you a nice, smooth, even line. It sometimes can be a little tricky to continue it, but just Control Z there and redo it. And you can adjust that smoothing on the Lazy Mouse by adjusting the Lazy Smooth and Lazy Radius. So Lazy Smooth is basically how much averaging in that stroke occurs. So how much the stroke gets smoothed out. And lazy radius is how long that trail is behind the brush. Um, and that distance of that trail is the distance where everything will be averaged. So, okay, painting around the ear. Okay, so it's starting to look pretty decent. We're starting to get some pretty decent um, areas in here where we know we're going to need edge loops. So we're only going to work on the head. We're not going to actually go back um, and work on the rest of the character, but the process is going to be fairly similar. You're going to think about where the creases would be. So we know that in the antecubital fossa, that's your the bend in your elbow. You know there's going to be a crease there. There's going to be creases in your armpit. There's going to be some creases in the abdominal muscles and around the ribs. So not so much creasing unless you got some breathing. There's not going to be so much creasing and deformation around the ribs, but we definitely want that topology to follow the bone structure. So you're going to think about where we're going to need to place these edges, like for instance, inside the webbing, we want the webbing to be able to collapse. So we're going to paint in some areas where we'll be able to hold that webbing and we can collapse things. So you just basically plan out all of these areas and how that would that area would collapse, and you can see that those edges would allow us to go ahead and collapse that webbing if we needed to bring the fingers together. So what we're going to do now is just start drawing in some of the polygons between the major groups, or inside the major groups. So I'm going to go with a 2 for my draw size. Actually, I'll probably go to a 3. That was a little chunky. So yeah, just adjusting to 3. That looks better. Nice. So we're just connecting the edge loops that we already had, and then there we go, and creating new edge loops for where the eye is, and then around I'm kind of getting the center between the outer edge and the edge around the eye, just kind of finding that center point. And we're just going to trace around the nostril, and then again finding the center. And for the mouth, we'll start at the upper lip, and then we're going to trace around, back around the bottom, and connecting in the middle. Okay, and then we're gonna be a little closer to the inside of the lips because we're gonna have to have another set of edge loops. And so we're gonna paint in that other set of edge loops here. So there's a big distance between the back jaw between those two edge loops. So we kind of want a middle point to hold everything. There we go. And that's looking better. I'm trying to make this look decent, but it's not just for the purposes of this video. But this isn't something that anybody's going to see. So it doesn't. It just is for your reference. So I'll trace the edge loop around the ear. Okay, and then we're going to connect the mouth to the ear right at that corner of the mouth. And we're going to have two edges connecting the corner of the mouth because we're going to want that to be able to expand and collapse. And then we'll connect around here up to the eye. And we want our geometry to be fairly consistent in size and shape, and those were a little large, so I'm connecting between to create more square geometry. So I want my quads to be a little more square rather than rectangular, and then connecting up to the eye. Alright, and I changed my topology. I changed that line so that once I get to that edge loop around the eye, I can change directions because there's a crease there and it's not going to look strange. Okay, so I'm going to change, rather than going around the base, I'm going to connect this up with the nose. And then I'm going to have to find a way to to kind of connect all of that change in direction. So I'll connect here, and now I will come down from the top of the mouth down, and you can see that that seems to work like that. Come down from the corner. And it's okay to make mistakes in this, it's just planning. So if there's an area where you leave a triangle or an n-gon, you can always go back and fix that when you're retopologizing. Sometimes it's easier to fix it in the retopology mode or phase of this process, because it's just sometimes easier to see what's going on. But you can see some pretty consistent topology lines in here. So I'm happy with what I've got going so far. I'm going to bring this edge up to the eye and then over. And then I think I'm just going to connect those 2 points there. And then connect the eye to the ear again. And you can still see that we have all quads. We do have a pole there, but that's fine. Poles aren't a bad thing, especially if you just try to leave the poles in areas that aren't going to have a lot of deforming, or where they'll be hidden. Connect the top of the eye across and meet in the middle. So one thing you want to be careful of is you don't want to have large changes in scale between adjacent quads. So you want to be gradual in the way you change the size and scale of those quads. So like I wouldn't want to put a large quad next to the pink quads. So and right now I'm just using the geometry in the pink group to kind of tie off all of the purple. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bring this, I'm going to split the difference and bring this edge across from the eye through the purple. That's looking pretty decent, so I think I'm going to paint my center line now. I'm going to create a straight line. It's hard, you're going to see a little bit of split in that line because of the symmetry. So I'm going to bring the edges in through the nostrils all the way down to as far down into the nostril as I can. Like so. I think we're going to add another edge here to bring on in, because otherwise we would have had a large rectangular quad there, and I didn't really like that. And at the top of the nose, you see there's another large rectangular quad. So what we're going to have to do is bring this edge up to here. And then I think that what we'll do is, yeah, I think we're gonna do more than one, and we're gonna try and bring the geometry straight up through. Let's see, I'm trying to think about how I want to deal with this whole thing. So that doesn't look too bad. And then I think we'll just use that corner on that nose and create another pole right there. Okay, so we're going to work on the bottom of the mouth. Just trying to bring some edges down that we can use later. Bring this up so it'll go around the neck. This area could be a little tricky in here. So I'm trying to think. I think I'll bring this edge around like this. And then I think that that'll work. And this is tricky. I don't know if that's going to work or not. It looks kind of sloppy, so I'm going to, yeah, that's pretty sloppy. I'm going to Control Z. Not really thrilled with that. This might be an area that we have to kind of figure out once we start doing our retopology, but if I bring that down like that, so okay, so that leaves all quads in there. It's not amazing, it's not my favorite, but it's all quads, and I think that that'll work. We can adjust that when we retopologize. So I'll bring these edges into the ear. And then we'll continue around the neck, the back of the head. Again, once we get into the retopology, the tools in 3ds Max will allow us to adjust that topology so that we can spread things out and move things around and keep everything a little more even. So, alright, that looks pretty good. So we'll connect these 2 points right here, and then we'll bring some edges down from over from the top of the eye and across. So like for instance, there's a pretty wide area of geometry right there, so once I go into my retopology, I'll probably try to even things out so that those polys right there aren't quite as large. So just bring these edges down, and you can see that we're keeping everything still quads, so I think that that looks good. Again, ignore the fact that I had symmetry turned on and we kind of get that double line. And so now I'm going to start tying the neck into the mouth. And I generally try to keep the same amount of geometry on the bottom lip as I have on the top lip, so the same number of edges. So I'm kind of tracing, I'm kind of starting my edges from those edges in the top lip. Okay, bring this one down. And I'm not going to continue it because I'm still not sure how I'm going to tie all that stuff off down there. So I'm just going to kind of bring it down through to the pink area. And I'm not thrilled that we don't have any edge loops for the center of the pink. So what I'm going to do is Control Z a couple times, go back, and then I'm going to trace out where I want some of my geometry down there. So I think I'm going to bring this edge around from the upper lip and down underneath the eye, which will give us a little more ability to crease underneath the eye. You need at least 3 edges to hold any crease, 2 edges to hold the height of the crease, and then 1 edge to hold the actual depression in that crease. Okay, and then I'll just kind of bring this up and around. And then we still need another edge. So I'll put an edge right here. So I'm going to have to figure out how to deal with that edge. So what I'll do is I'll bring this edge down. And then I think I'll connect this up. There we go. So that's going to keep it all quads. And it's a weird change in geometry, but that's okay. It's underneath the head in an area where there's already a crease, so I don't think it'll show up too bad. Bring these down, connect them to the yellow group. And it's going to get a little dense as we get into the center here. So just kind of thinking about how I might want to handle that. I think what I'm going to do is try and tie off some of this geometry down and get rid of some of those edges that were continuing down to the neck. It's not really working out, so let's try this. We'll bring that center line down first. And then we'll try coming down and tying off some of this geometry and basically getting rid of that edge, that extra edge loop. That's not going to work. I gotta actually bring this edge down. There we go. This is going to work. So you can kind of see how it's a little blocky in there, but you can kind of see how that edge is getting tied off. And I think that once we get into our retopology, we're going to have to deal with this a little more. And I think that we're going to have to not continue. So there's 2 edges that I'd need to put in from the top lip. I don't think that we're going to be able to do that. So I just bridged the 2. There's only 1 edge that I brought down through. So there we go. It's not pretty. It's all quads in there, but it's not pretty. We can go back and tweak that once we do our retopology. So I'll bring the neck loops around. We have a lot of geometry to deal with in here, so we're going to have to try and tie off some of these edges so we don't have to deal with as much. Bring our center line straight down. That's not going to work. Just kind of trying to think about how this is all going to have to go together. So my feeling is that I'm gonna have to go back and deal with that area in retopology. Sometimes when you try to tie off some of these edges so you don't have as many edges connecting straight down through, sometimes it takes a little bit of playing around with in retopology. So we've planned out most of the head. I think that most of it looks, other than that neck, I think it looks pretty decent. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to go ahead and retopologize this. Okay. So what we need to do is I'm going to, the way that we're going to retopologize this, you can only use this correctly if you only have one subtool. So, and right now I've got a lot of subtools in here. So what I'm going to do is go to my simple brush, just switch over, and I will select Sphere 3D, drag that out. All right, Control N to clear the canvas, and then go into my subtool palette, and I'm going to append a new that painted frog, and then I'm going to delete the sphere. So just with the sphere selected, go down, delete, hit OK, and that should delete it. There we go. Alright, so we could go in and do a little more work in here to try and bring everything together. This is going to be hidden by the eyeball, so you don't really have to spend a lot of time making this perfect. Probably could go ahead and deal with this once I'm retopologizing, but I'll just kind of lay out one more set of edge loops in there. Okay, and then in here we could just go in and we'll deal with that in the retopology. Alright, so I'm going to now, with that that subtool isolated, now I'm going to go back to my simple brush, hit switch, and then Control N to clear the canvas again, and then select Z sphere, drag that out in the canvas, hit T to make it editable, and then we're going to go down to rigging. You're going to select your mesh. You're going to select the isolated Gripply, or the isolated frog. So that's this one, and it will bring it in like so. And then you're going to go down to topology and click edit topology, and that's going to get rid of the Z sphere and place us in edit mode so we can go in and start laying in our geometry. Okay, so what we're going to do is go ahead and hold down shift. Well, first make sure symmetry is turned on, so hit X, and then we're going to hold down shift to start a new point, and then you're just going to release shift and click for your polygons. So to add a new point, again, to add a new point to any existing polygon, you have to hold down shift, click on one of the corners of that polygon, and that starts a new polygon draw. So then you'll release shift and then click. So shift, click on that point, release, click. Okay, and you're just going to go ahead and do that again and again. So shift, release, click, shift, click, release, click. Okay, and just keep on doing that same process and follow all of the topology that we have drawn out so far. So this actually goes fairly quick because you've already planned everything out, and right now it's just going through and clicking on all of those points. And it's okay See how here this is this goes through that curve. So what we can do is we can shift this over by clicking move, and that allows us to move our points around. We could do that to kind of space things out a little better so that we don't get as much of that distortion where we're going through those that curve right there. So shift, click, click, shift, release, click, click, shift, release, click, click, click. I'm not going to keep doing that because it's going to get annoying, I know. So just start drawing out all of your topology. Oops. Shift click. Alright, so here's something you'll see occasionally. I overshot and I didn't connect the points correctly, so it places another point inside of our inside of this other edge. So I can hold down Alt and click to delete that, and then go back and fix those points. Alright, so Alt will subtract and delete a point that you've already placed. Okay, now this is the inside of the nostril, so what I'm going to do is just tie everything off inside. And then we're going to end up having a triangle in here. That's fine for the inside of the nostril. Okay, so, and then to see this, you can press A and it'll allow you to see the geometry that you've already applied. It will be with a subdivision of 2, so if you want to see how it looks with the raw mesh, just go into adaptive skin, turn your density down to 1, and then you can see exactly what the geometry looks like that you've constructed. Alright, and so I'm just going to continue finishing this off. Oops. Now there are a lot of retopology tools that you can use. I'm mainly showing you ZBrush because ZBrush is, most of us have it. Definitely if you're going to school, you probably have access to it, whereas if you have something like TopoGun, you probably won't have access to that through school. You may not, I'm not sure. I definitely did not when I was going to school, so that's why I think using ZBrush, because most of us have access to ZBrush, it's fairly useful to know how to retopologize in ZBrush. Now ZBrush also does have some auto retopology tools. ZeroMesher is really handy, but this gives you the most control over over your topology. There are also some other ways to remesh in ZBrush as well. So there's a way to edit your topology in ZBrush, but for now I think that this is a nice, simple, quick method. So we'll just deal with this. Now I'm not going to tie the mouth together because I'm going to want to be able to open the mouth. So I'm going to leave that edge there open and not continue it down to the bottom of the mouth. And I probably went a little dense with this mesh. I probably could have been a little less dense. So just be aware that you might want to be a little careful about adding a lot of geometry. And again, to preview what we have, hold down A or press A, and that'll allow you to preview it. Press A again, bring you back into your edit topology. Okay. All right. You can see I messed up again there again. So I tied that point off inside the edge, so I'm going to hold down Alt to delete it and then start it over. Now with your draw size in ZBrush, you want to make sure that it's on 1. You don't really want a large draw size for this process because you're only clicking on single points anyway. So having a large brush is just going to mess with you. And sometimes you can see through this mesh, and sometimes that's going to be annoying because you can see the back side of that geometry. So you're just going to have to deal with that, unfortunately. Oops. All right. Bring this down around. Rotate around so that I can get into this area a little better. Draw out the geometry for the ear. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring this in again, even though I haven't drawn those edges in there. I know I need them. So I'll bring this in. And then I'm going to tie this stuff off in here. And then here I know that I'm going to have a triangle someplace in here, so I'll just do it this way. Take a look at that. That's fine. Again, press A to preview. Let's deal with the top of the head. That's pretty good back there. Come over here. Come down around the neck. You can see this goes fairly fast. I'm going to go back up to the mouth, top of the mouth, and start working on that. Sometimes in your planning you might have left a triangle, or you might have left something, an end gone that you weren't aware of. So this is where you can deal with that. It's pretty good as you're working. You can kind of find ways to tie things off. I can see there's a problem down here to tie things off where you weren't able to see that in your painting process. You can see that there's an extra edge down here, so I have to get rid of that. So I will I'll Alt click and then tie this all back together. This process is so much simpler when you draw everything out ahead of time, because you're really not thinking about much. You're just going in and connecting points. Let's do another preview. Alright, so, and as you're doing your previews are a good way to see if you have any problems, and I can see right now in my preview that something in here is messed up. So I will hit A to go back, and you can see where I messed this up. I have a point that's sitting inside that edge, so I'll hold down Alt, delete that, and reconstruct that area correctly. Okay, finish this up. We're almost done. I know it's kind of boring to sit and watch retopology. It's not the most exciting part of 3D, but it really is nice to be able to see very clean work in the end. Oops. Alright, so we'll deal with these areas here. And then once you've done this, you can shift this around so it's not quite as hard of an edge, hard of a point there. so. Alright, let's come down here. This is probably my least favorite part of this entire retopology. I just don't think that this is terribly clean in here. So I would, let me see, there's a mess there too. So bring this down here. So I don't think this is terribly clean, so I'm not super thrilled with it. I don't like these long polygons. They're not ideal for animation. So I will fill this all in and then figure out how to go back and fix that. Because I definitely don't want to bring that geometry all the way through here. But I'm not liking that in there either. So let me, oops, some messes in there. Let me finish this up and then we'll go back and fix that. Saving. So again, anytime that your project saves, it's going to kick you out of edit mode. So then you'll go back over to topology, click edit mode, and you can continue. Alright, so that's a little bit of a mess in here, so let's go ahead and clean some of this up. I will shift things over, make it look a little prettier. This is the problem with, if you haven't drawn out your topology, sometimes you have to come in and make sure everything is nice and neat, because I definitely think that that was pretty messy. Okay. So we're almost done with the head for this. Oh, there's a problem. Control Z to go back. This frog character, which is a Gripply. Hopefully it will. It's a Gripply from Pathfinder. So hopefully I will go back and be able to print this out. But he's got armor and everything with him, so I haven't completed it. So I'm not showing that part of it. All right, so I'm going to delete all these points in here. Just not happy with them. I don't like the way that I dealt with that. So what I'm going to do is you can add points to an edge. So if you click on and hold down shift and you click on an edge, you can add points. Let's do that again. You don't have to, I apologize, you don't have to hold down shift, just click on the edge and you can add points to that edge. And I'm going to go ahead and add a few. Notice that it continued that up here. I do have to hold down shift to get rid of that endpoint, and then I can do it, add a new edge through here. Okay. Now, this is a mess in here. I have a edge that was just hanging. Let me see. another edge hanging in there. All right. Move this around. I think we're going to be able to deal with this a little better. That looks a little better. Not quite as messy as it was. Hold down A to check it out. It's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and finish up inside the eyes. Alright, so bring the edges here in. Again, we're kind of winging this because I did draw this out, but ZBrush, I had to restart ZBrush, so I don't have that piece anymore, so just kind of winging it. Alright, and then once we have that, we're going to go in and start trying to tie off some of this, because this part, you're not going to really see it, so there's no reason to make this all look really pretty in here. Oops. Alright. So that's all set. So there's our retopologized head. Alright. Now in ZBrush, what's nice is your retopology. If you sculpted something in ZBrush, your retopology it should be the size of your original sculpt, and be in exactly the same position. So if you have a lot of extra detail that maybe can't be captured in your retopology, you can go and do a projection in ZBrush to capture all that detail again, and then apply it to a normal map, or create a normal map and apply it with a normal map in your 3D package. We can also do a little bit of a higher preview to see what this will look like with a little denser mesh. Maybe this is, if you had a normal map applied, this is what you'd see. Okay, and then typically with the mouth, I could go in and add one more edge loop so that everything meets. Probably would do that, and then what I'd do is I'd take it into 3ds Max, and I would go ahead and create an interior part of the mouth. Let me go ahead and actually tie that all together too, because I think it'll help the preview. So I said don't connect these, but what I would do is in 3ds Max I would separate this edge so that it's not connected, and then I would go in and create my interior mouth. So I hope this was useful. If you have any more, if you'd like, we have a lot more tutorials, so you can check out at 3D on our 3D tutorials page at www.ragdollanimation.com. Almost done here. I did reduce the number of points in here, so I'm going to leave a triangle in there. I'll deal with that later. Alright, so that's all closed up. So, and it's not terrible, the amount of geometry there. So I think that this wouldn't be too bad to rig. Again, if anything is really messy, you can go back in and move stuff around using your move brush or your move tool up here. So, but that's the process. That's how we would do our retopology in ZBrush. Go ahead and draw out your areas, paint in your areas where you know that you're going to have edge loops. Then go in and go ahead and paint in those edge loops, paint in all of your geometry, and then go into your Z-sphere, and you'll bring in your mesh that you had painted with your Z-sphere, and you'll go to rigging, select your mesh, and then go down to topology, click edit topology, and go ahead and start clicking away. So, all right, that's the end of the tutorial. I hope that you found it useful. Again, check out our stuff at www.ragdollanimation.com. Like us on Facebook, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.